Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. For the last 2 weeks, Zimbabwe's social media has been occupied with statements from one group of war veterans and another. The issue here is that Mnangagwa has failed and he should go. And it is interesting to note that the war veterans have monopolized the debate mainly because of the political system itself. Ever since the country's independence, Mugabe has used the war veterans to push his own personal and Zanu PF agenda of imposing a de facto one-party state. The war veterans have claimed that they risked everything to fight in the nation's liberation war, and therefore then they deserve a say. No one would dispute that. The dispute here is, do they deserve a say way and above that of the rest of the Zimbabwean populace? That is the issue. Unfortunately, in practice, they have punched way above their weight. What they say counts more than what anybody else says. And they've been able to throw their weight with the backing of the Zanu PF regime. Indeed, the Zanu PF has used the war veterans to do its own dirty work. And the war veterans have used that as leverage to force the regime to give them a greater say than everybody else. It is interesting to note also that the Zimbabwe Constitution has assigned a role for the war veterans. Their rights seem to be more important than the rights of the rest of the citizens. And the war veterans have exploited that. Zanu PF needed that to be in the Constitution because it used the war veterans as its foot soldiers. It used them ever since the country's independence to help create and retain the de facto one-party state. There is an audio that has been taking the rounds today of somebody supposedly in the army expressing their strong views of what is going on in the country today. Just want to listen to half of it.
It is issued by me, a member of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces. I'm not representing the Zimbabwe Defense Force. Okay, thank you, commanders, for this opportunity. We will not take any question at the moment, but we will supply a signed statement within 10 working days. Good afternoon, fellow Zimbabweans. Today is 3 February 2025. Our time is 1608 Hotel Romeo Sierra. Following our last address on 13 November 2017, we clearly stated that Zimbabwe Defense Force will uphold the Constitution and will not abandon it to be abused by few individuals and counter-revolutionary gangsters. Zimbabwe Defense Force's main reason it was created is to protect Zimbabwe, its people, its national security, interests, and its territorial integrity, and to uphold this constitution. I would like to refer you to section 212 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, amendment number 20 of 2013. Please, it is important to take note that Zimbabwe Defense Force remains a stakeholder in respect to the gains of the liberation struggle. And when these are threatened, we are obliged to take action. Firstly, I would like to warn the president. Firstly, I would like to warn the first secretary of Zanu PF, Commander-in-Chief of the Zimbabwe Defense Force, President Emerson Mnangagwa, that time of killing former and serving army general must come to an end. Now, this must stop forthwith. We are now aware that President Mnangagwa and Owen Mutanube were responsible for death of army generals since 1980. And may the following souls of the generals who were assassinated by President Mnangagwa rest in peace.
The gentleman goes on to enumerate some of the so-called generals who were killed. But I think he comes to the point of the 2017 military coup, which he goes on to justify as being lawful and necessary and constitutional. He even goes to the extent of quoting High Court Judge George Chiwenga, who ruled that that coup was indeed lawful, justified, and constitutional. Let's make this very clear. There is no constitution, democratic constitution in the world that will permit a military coup. If the officers or the individuals were aggrieved that somebody had broken the law, the recourse is very simple and very clear in the Constitution. You take the matter to the court. By staging a coup, this individual became the judge, the jury, and the executioner. Of course, that is the essence of lawlessness. And the gentleman goes on to justify that that action may be necessary now. Again, I reiterate, if anyone has broken the law, the Constitution is very clear. You take the matter to the court. You cannot be the judge, the accuser, the jury, and the executioner. The precedence that was set in 2017 should indeed be revisited and make sure that that is put right. No nation can afford to live under a threat of somebody someday waking up and deciding that a military coup is necessary and they can go ahead, and there will be no consequences for that. Zimbabwe, at the present moment, is a pariah state, a failed state, because it is a lawless nation. Ever since the country's independence, we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. And this constant threat of military coup or street protests is only helping to make the situation worse. Zimbabwe has become totally unstable, politically, economically, and socially. Millions of Zimbabweans have left the country in despair as economic refugees and or political refugees. So the issue of a military coup being justified is a nonsense. Now, let me come to the second point. The second point here is these people, war veterans, be they in the army, the police, the CIO, and so forth, they are the ones who imposed Mugabe for those 37 years. And in 2017, they are the ones who removed Mugabe and imposed Mnangagwa. Let's be very clear. Those who staged the military coup decided who was going to succeed Mugabe. And they went on to make sure that they stay in by rigging the 2018 elections and then the most recent ones, the 2023 elections. The people of Zimbabwe did not have any meaningful say in that. It is interesting now that the same war veterans are coming back, and now they want Mnangagwa to go. He has failed to meet their needs, and they want him gone. And they already have the replacement, VP Chiwenga. Anyone who has been following Zimbabwe's history will tell you that VP Chiwenga's rise in the army ranks had nothing to do with merit. It was to do with his blind allegiance to those in power. And as a senior member of the army, he has played his role in creating and imposing the Zanu PF dictatorship. He cannot deny his involvement in that. Just like all other military officials who have followed have done. Here is one of his successors speaking at a recent rally a few moons ago.
Zanu PF itatonga kusika matonge ameranya. Muchida musingadi. Ameni. Apa ndakutaura sakomanda ami. Shashandisa inonzi command 40. Yes. muridzi wemusangano tichazvigadzira. Tinonzwana? Amen. Zanu PF Vamberi na ID Mnangagwa pasi nemhandu security forces saka PC mkuru wemaudon ini
Anyone who knows Chiwenga knows he was a Zanu PF thug, not different from all the other senior army officials. And he has had his lion's share of the spoils of power. No one can deny that Chiwenga is incredibly rich. He's got farms, he's got business, he's got cars. And one of the most annoying things, as far as I'm concerned, was his amassing of gold watches. He's reportedly got 45 gold watches. What the devil do you need 45 gold watches for? The short of it is VP Chiwenga is just as corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical as any of the others are not PF thugs. And so these war veterans are now campaigning to remove Mnangagwa and replace him with Chiwenga. I think, in fact, I know with certainty that as much as their grievance is that they are poor, they are as poor as church mice right now, 45 years after independence. However, even if they do get their wish, my prediction is a year after Chiwenga assumes the presidency, the overwhelming majority of the war veterans will be as poor as a church mouse. What is tragic here is that the penny is not dropped in the empty heads of our war veterans. They still do not realize that swapping one dictator for another is not going to change anything. What we need in the country is to end the dictatorship. This system that says Zanu PF leaders have got the divine right to rule the country. A system that they, war veterans, have supported by playing their role in imposing Zanu PF dictatorship on the nation. I think one of the most memorable contributions of the war veterans would be in 2008, when Mnangagwa used them as the foot soldiers in the fight to stage the 2008 electoral coup. Here is Mnangagwa boasting about that incident.
2008 patakaita ma-elections pakaposa papinda Tsvangirai dandiri election agent ya president ma-results abuda tiri party headquarters vamutasa vanga vari secretary vedu administration Vamutasa muripi yafona. Ndiri kwaRusape. Koma gwenda kwaRusape seka marizauts achibuda kudai. Vanga aiwa zvako izvo Mnangagwa ndezvako enda kumusha. Ofisi vanga vabisa zvinhu zvavo zvose. Watofunga kuti Zanu yadini yaparara. President ofona zvakamira sei? Kati ndomamira zvakaita takatodini kateda sei manje? Mama ndikati abvudzai baba nditaurira baba gadzirai politburo, cabinet. Musarangarira zvimwe zvinhu, gadzirai chi cabinet. Asi nangoda kuti muzive kuti 2008 maresults abuda vamutasa vakatiza.
As a country we face a generational transition. Vana vesa vari kuma below 35, they are crying out for help. The country is in a mess. Arusuru, we know we are inheriting a mess. We know this country has been left with nothing.
I'm assuring you that starting from tomorrow, you'll see a different nation from what you have seen or read on the news about these results and everything. Where we are going ahead there, the situation will be very different. What we said to our people, they could not see with their own eyes. We are going to act as we see it fit. We are prepared to go the whole distance.
My message to the war veterans is that the war of liberation was never fought for the purposes of imposing Zanu PF as the divine ruler of the country. The right of every citizen to a meaningful say in the governance of the country is more than just a right. It is the essence of good governance. It is absolutely shocking that even now, with the benefit of 2,500 history of democratic rule as introduced by the ancient Greeks, with 45 years of our own independence, in which we had a dictatorship, we're still failing to understand that the system we have got right now is not working. And that this habit of removing one dictator and replacing him with another is not solving anything. We're just going round and round in circles here. As much as people appreciate the effort and the sacrifice of those who participated in the war of liberation, it must also be underlined that they were fighting not only for their own voice to be heard, but the voice of all Zimbabweans to be heard. It is most disconcerting that the only voice that is being heard in the political arena is that of the war veterans. Everybody else has been effectively silenced by the regime itself and by the war veterans themselves. Zanu PF has been very good at using the war veterans as his foot soldiers to do its dirty work. The video I've just played there, where Jabulan Swanda was the chairperson of the war veterans at the time in 2008, was boasting of what the war veterans were going to do to those people who had dared reject Zanu PF. I don't remember any of these war veterans ever condemning that. And I've not yet heard any of these war veterans calling for Mnangagwa to resign and promising that we will have free, fair, and credible elections. They are as much entitled to choose their own leader. If they think VP Chiwenga will make an excellent president, that is their democratic right to do so. But what we must emphasize here is that they have got to accept that their say is not the final one. The decision on who at the end of the day rules Zimbabwe must be a collective decision of the people of Zimbabwe in a free, fair, and credible electoral process. Until we cross that path, we're just wasting our time here. These war veterans who are up in arms against Mnangagwa are the ones who imposed him in the first place. They were up in arms against Mugabe in 2017, and yet they are the ones who imposed him. We cannot carry on with this madness of swapping one dictator for another. Let's end the dictatorship now. Let's embrace the democratic right of all Zimbabweans a meaningful say in the governance of the country. That should be our starting point. Food for thought. Thank you very much, those of you who were able to listen. And I hope you'll be able to join us at 6 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time.